Chief, if you will, lay out, I guess, your administrative policy when dealing with discipline problems. And I'm specifically referring to the one that the officers call the Green Mile.
Yes, sir. You know, the city funds the police department almost $250 million a year, and that's a billion, a B. And the public puts its trust in us. The public expects a professional police department, and they deserve a professional police department. And it's my responsibility to assure that that happens. And from time to time, we have an officer that violates that public trust. The public puts that trust in us, and I don't make any apologies for doing what is necessary to assure that we retain that trust. So from time to time, officers do things they're not supposed to do. We have 1,900 employees. And some of it is they made a mistake trying to do the right thing. Obviously, some of it, they violated the rules or the law on purpose. And we look at each one of those individually. Obviously, we have a disciplinary process. Sometimes we have to decommission people, that is to remove their authority to act on behalf of the metropolitan government. And we look to see where the best assignment for them is in the interim. And we're able to place those people in our records division and our warrants division, various other places where that they can still perform duties. But some officers and employees have violated the public trust in such a manner that I'm not comfortable having the public place their faith in them. In other words, if the public is depending on them for some police service, I've got to assure the public that this is a person that can carry out that service within the trust they've placed with us. So on rare occasion, and certainly a very minority number of our disciplinary issues, we have an assignment in the lobby where the officers report. We know where they are during the hours we're responsible for them.
Are you saying that the officers who are placed on that lobby administrative assignment can't be trusted to do police work?
For whatever reason, at least permanently or temporarily, they have disqualified themselves from being able to serve the public in that manner. Sometimes they've had serious allegations against them, and sometimes through intensive investigation, we've been able to clear or at least mitigate the allegations that's been made. But some of them obviously are such that they face termination.
In a big picture standpoint, one of the things that we have reported and it's been discussed is that the Office of Professional Accountability has 45 days after an allegation has been made to investigate and I guess return their findings to someone up here on the administrative level for further action. However, we've also documented, and you're aware, that there have been cases where men and women have sat on this administrative duty 8 months, some as long as a year, waiting to learn the final resolution of the charges against them. Are you comfortable with that amount of time, or do you dispute that that amount of time has passed for some of these people?
No, in some cases that has occurred, and no, I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not happy with it. It's just part of the process. The Office of Professional Accountability, the target date is 45 days, and sometimes we have to extend that investigation. They report their findings to me. I assign a deputy chief to hear the cases as they review it, and as our department advocate reviews it. Sometimes we have to send it back for reinvestigation. And then, of course, the officers, employees have attorneys employed by the union, and sometimes that delays things even more. So it's part of the process. It's a court case, however you might term it. It's like any other case that goes to court, whether it be criminal or civil. It takes time to get everything in a posture where it needs to be, so that we can make sure that all the evidence is presented in a proper manner. You know, from our departmental hearing, it goes on to an administrative law judge, then it goes to the Civil Service Commission, then it might go into Chancery Court. So it's a situation where that we have to assure ourselves that we've done everything that we need to do, just like any other case, whether it be a car wreck or anything else that goes to court. Where that we have done all that we can do to ensure that we put all the evidence on the table for everybody to consider.
What are you doing, or have you done, to speed up that process? You're telling me you recognize it's lengthy, not comfortable with it. What are you doing or have you done to make it move faster?
Well, in times past, I think that we did have an issue with the investigations taking too long, and so we track each of those now. There's a report filed twice a month. But once the investigation is complete, then, frankly, that's where it gets bogged down from time to time, is making sure that we have everything, sending it back for information that we think may not have been covered. Again, the delays in setting the hearings. So we want the cases to go forward as soon as possible. We want the case resolved in whatever manner, the officer back at work or the officer no longer on the payroll, if that's the case. But it's certainly to our advantage. It's a system. We do not have the luxury, as in maybe your business and other businesses, of making decisions based on the fact and carrying that out. We're somewhat at the mercy of the court system in going forward.
Some of the men and women have spent time on this administrative duty, and they're now calling it the stuff on the inside of the wall, the Iron Curtain. First it was the Green Mile, now they're calling it the Iron Curtain. They're saying this is punishment. You say what? Well,
I say that they're in a warm place or a cool place, depending on the season. It's the best that we can do in making sure that we've assured the public, any officer you come in contact with that has our blessing, and you can depend on them to carry out that service. So I understand their situation, but on the other hand, it's my responsibility to make sure that the public, as they come in contact with any police officer, has someone, it's someone that they can trust and depend on.
Several of those men and women, to a person, have said to us, and I'm sure you've heard it, the chief has put us down here to humiliate us. Is that your purpose?
Not at all the case. Not at all the case. We have tried other assignments, information booths, records, that sort of thing. At one time, the position of the department, we sent them home, and they were at home for whatever period of time. But that's not something I'm comfortable with. If the police department is responsible for them for the 8 hours a day that they're being paid, then I'm going to know where they are and what they're doing.
Some of these same people have, and you've heard the word, I don't think I'm sharing, and it's going to hurt your feelings, you've heard it. They said Chief Anderson's a bully, and he uses his office and the means accessible to him to intimidate us and sort of rule this 1,400 member department, 2,000 nearly if you put in civilian employees, with fear and intimidation. I know you've heard that. How do you respond to the criticism?
Again, my first responsibility is to the public, and I'm going to do all the things necessary to make sure the public is served by this police department in the most professional manner possible. We have a system of rules, regulations, and policies. They're very easy to follow. People that make mistakes know they've made a mistake, and we deal with that accordingly. Issues of conduct that aren't mistakes, we have to deal with in a more severe manner, unfortunately.
Chief, you've heard some of the stories from individuals who've spoken to us on camera where you can see their face, and some that you haven't. Maybe you know their voice. Why are these people saying these things?
Well, frankly, I have not seen those. I made a decision up front after this series started that I have to make decisions concerning these people at some point in the future. So it's just best that I not look at them, and that way that any thoughts I may have after seeing them or hearing them doesn't enter into my decision-making process. So I've made a point to avoid that.
Do you think that there is a morale problem in the department? Again, some of these same people who are calling you a bully and saying these other things say there's a real morale problem in this police department because of the way the chief deals with the people.
No, go out on the street and stop the next 10 people you see and see what they think about the police department. People out on the street don't know who I am, but they know who the officers on the street are. They know the type of service they're receiving, and overwhelmingly, Nashville is proud and satisfied with its police department. It doesn't have anything to do with me, but it has everything to do with the men and women out there on the street that are doing an excellent job every day.
Now, that refers to sort of external stuff. I just wondered, you don't perceive any internal morale problem the people that work for you?
I do not, and if there was a morale problem, it would not. That would be reflected in the service we provide to the public. So the public is the best judge of the morale of our police officers. So overwhelmingly, the officers in the field, the officers out there doing their job, are very satisfied with their job. They perform in a professional manner all day, every day.
Had you heard the Green Mile reference? Did you know what that was?
I've heard it. Everything in the police department receives a nickname of some sort. Some of our official titles, like community coordinator, gets shortened to COCO. So yes, I've heard that.
What was your thought? Because it was after
it's somewhat creative, and the police officers are very creative and people, and I'm proud of that. That we have people that, whether that was humorous or however, but we have people in the police department that are very innovative, very creative, and that's reflected in the service they provide to the public.
Some of these people who are your critics have said the chief handles what are seemingly very similar cases very differently. There was recently an officer that used profanity when trying to get a guy out of a traffic stop out on Bell Road. Another officer used profanity in a similar fashion when trying to break up a fight at his school. And the perception is that those cases were handled differently when seemingly they were very similar. Two officers used profanity during the course of their work. One officer is now back on the job and the other one is not yet.
Yeah, and I think that the similarity ends with the perception of the officers involved. The officer on the traffic stop made a serious mistake. Number one, he came in and said, I made a very serious mistake. He was in a very stressful situation facing an armed man. He didn't do anything tactically wrong. His language was unacceptable. He accepted responsibility for that, and we go forward. He has not been returned to duty at this point. He's on limited duty in the Warrants Division. The other officer that you reference, the profanity and the name calling and the insulting that went on did not have anything to do with breaking up a fight. It was another individual walking by, and he went out of his way to create an adversarial situation with that person by calling him very insulting and degrading names.
How long does it take to adjudicate a case like that? You know, where you've got the facts, in both cases things were caught on tape. One of them, as you say, wrapped up relatively quickly, and you've got the guy's gun and badge back in his hand, even though you got him on, not a street duty, but he's back on the job. How long does it take?
A lot of it depends on the officer. You know, like the one officer you're referencing came in first day. He said, I did what I did, and I need to accept responsibility for it, and he initiated the settlement process. Other officers do not readily acknowledge the wrongness of their actions, and that's the whole part of the disciplinary process, is making sure that people understand it's not just punishment, it's a corrective action, and what I did is unacceptable.
What rights do your officers have to criticize the administration or even speak publicly about how they feel they've been treated?
Well, certainly, I think they have every right in the world, and I make no issue with that. And obviously, they have, if you go outside the bounds of truthfulness and accuracy, you know, that could be an issue that we may need to address. But this is America. People have their own opinions. I encourage that.
Can they express them publicly without fear of being administratively punished by this department in your office?
Well, again, we have boundaries on what we can do, but on the other hand, people that have an opinion about themselves, someone else, the police department, as long as they stay within those boundaries, then certainly this is America.
What are they, Chief? I mean, what can a guy say without getting in trouble?
Well, you'll have to give me some examples of what you were talking about.
Well, I know one fellow fairly recently made a Facebook comment about something that we'd reported, and he got in trouble for making a Facebook comment. And I understand that Stratford officer who did a television interview got in some trouble over that as well for conducting the interview.
Well, on the first one, I am familiar with that. I'd have to go back and look at it. But, yeah, I think he made some inaccurate statements, which reflected badly on the police department. The other officer, I'm not sure what these comments are. I've not looked at that again. I told you that I have not viewed that, and I'm letting other people make that decision because, again, that way any thoughts I may have does not enter into the decision-making process.
So you're saying if he got in trouble, he didn't get in trouble for doing the interview, it's for being less than truthful in what he shared?
Well, I don't know. The first officer, yes. The second officer you're talking about, I don't know what was said, and so I can't make any comment about that.
Civil service is a place where officers go when they want to appeal their termination or discipline. In some cases, officers have been fired. They have taken their cases to the Civil Service Commission and been essentially told what you did was not a fireable offense. What do you do with those officers? Do you give them their gun and badge back and put them back to work?
Well, in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. You know, frankly, the Civil Service Commission is stuck in the 1960s. And in fact, this is 2015. The standards are different. The public expectation is different. Just look at what's going on across America today. So we have to adjust to those standards. And so my view of what the standard should be for police work in America in 2015 is different than the Civil Service Commission. So sometimes we're stuck with the decisions they make, and sometimes people have a civil service right to regain their employment, to be paid as a police officer. But again, as a matter of public trust, I'm not willing to put them in a position where the public has to depend on them.
What do you do with those people?
Administrative assignments. Assignments where that they do not take any police action, but work in the records division, the warrants division, places like that, where they can be productive, but just not carrying out commissioned police officer duties.
And of course, they would probably view that as I'm being punished because I fought the chief's office and he's going to make sure I don't win.
Well, I think that anyone that's in an assignment they do not like could characterize it as punishment if they have to work the evening shift as opposed to the night shift, or you know, everybody has their own view of what might be punishment. Again, this is America. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I encourage it.
There has been, and I'm repeating some of this because I didn't do some original reporting and I can't vouch for everything, but I remember a reference about a case where an officer was investigated and actually was on administrative duty, whether it was in the lobby or one of these other places, for more than a year, and then when they got done, maybe they got 3 days of suspension or sometimes nothing. That seems like an awful long time to figure out that you didn't do much.
You know, I'm not familiar with that case. It doesn't sound, that doesn't ring a bell with anything that I know about. We have had some officers down there for an extended period of time with serious allegations that we were able to clear, or at least clear them in a manner that they could return to duty. And I'm very happy about that.
We have obviously been talking about this for a while, we as a group, and I say that loosely. I saw the article in the Tennessean the other day as well, looking at the number of decommissions over the past couple of years, and I think the number was, and we've reported it too, but something was 68 people over the last couple of years since 2013 have been decommissioned for, I guess, allegations of potential wrongdoing. Is that a large number to you? Well,
in the whole scheme of things, no. And you know, keep in mind that it occurs anytime there's a suspension where that the officer is not actively reporting to duty. So in an organization of this size and as precise as we have to be in our disciplinary process, no, it's not a high number. It's a number that I would say that we would compare favorably with other police departments our size.
So that's what you meant by that. If somebody got a 5-day suspension, they get decommissioned for those 5 days.
Sure.
So that would be factored into those numbers.
Yeah, I was thinking of this, the sheer number 68 when you consider. I think the total number is like 350, but a lot of those were medical type things where you got, you know, you've got an operation and we take your gun and badge away when it's clear you're not going to be performing police duties. I think that made up maybe 75% of them, but there were 68 cases, as I recall, that were, you know, administrative type things where we think you did something. Chief, in a big picture sense, you're running a tight ship in your mind, holding officers to a really high standard. You think that's how it ought to be, and others are perceiving this in some other way? I
think it's how it has to be. Like I say, look across America now, what's going on, how police departments are being scrutinized. We have a very high bar that we have to meet every day. That's just the way it is. That's the public expectation. That's what the public pays for. There are people that criticize me for running too tight a ship. There are people that criticize me for not running tight enough ship. So I have to be somewhere where I think that we need to be to maintain the public trust we have here in Nashville.
What are your thoughts when they call you a bully? I mean, they've said it, you've heard it, and you said you don't think you are. that's where it comes from. And if too heavy-handed, he's bullying.
You know, when you take this job, when you take the job of a police officer, you have to understand that people are going to have uncomplimentary remarks about you, whether you're writing them a traffic ticket or whether you're carrying out the duties of the chief of police. So I've been doing this for more than 40 years. It's just part of the job.
How long do you continue to serve as chief? I know some have suggested maybe when the mayor changes, you may decide to do something different. 40-odd years. What are your plans moving forward?
I'm not making any plans. This is a great job. This is a great police department. I have obligations here. I'm going to carry out those obligations. And so, yes, there'll be a new mayor September or so, and the new mayor and I will sit down and talk and make sure that we're on the same page and that we can move this city forward.
So you anticipate, serving under, the next administration, whoever that is?
Yes, yes.
That's a big picture type thing. People have said, when is that guy going to retire? Which is what I just asked in a very nice way. Let's see. And forgive me, I'm looking down at
So remember, the chief of police is a civil service employee, Scott.
Yeah, serves at the, has civil service protection.
That's right.
Yeah, we all serve at the sort of will and pleasure of somebody. In your case, it's the mayor, and I've got about 4 or 5 people whose will and pleasure I serve at. Chief, I don't know if this is true or not. I'm going to ask you. You guys got reaccredited about a year ago. CALEA is the group that accredits police departments. Was there any mention in the accreditation information that the feeling of the people that came to, I guess, look at the department and see what it was doing, that the department was too heavy-handed when it came to discipline?
Not to my knowledge. Now, the last accreditation, which was a year ago, we got glowing remarks from the people, the assessors that were here, and the commissioners that heard the report when we went to Chicago. Actually, it was somewhat embarrassing to sit there in front of the other chiefs because of all the accolades they gave us. So we had no negative findings at all.
Chief, one last thing. There have been people with...
And let me say about the accreditation process. I say all those things, but keep in mind, that's the people in the department. I can't take a lot of credit for all the glowing remarks we got during the accreditation inspection. That was department-wide, and I'm pretty privileged here to say to those inspectors, pick out any 10 officers down there that you see walking down the street and talk to them, and base your findings on what they tell you.
Some of the people that have complained to us have said if you're a person who has some rank, you're a lieutenant or something of that nature, you don't wind up sitting in the lobby, outside the door, outside what used to be homicide down there. You wind up in the bubble at one of the precincts or something like that. Do you treat brass, people with some rank, differently than rank and file officers in these same discipline type issues?
No.
So lieutenants get...
If there was a lieutenant that was in the situation that I've described, that's where the lieutenant would be. Fortunately, most of our ranking officers have sort of vetted themselves as they rose to that rank, and there is a selection process, and so thankfully we're a department that has very few ranking officers have anything more than a minor difficulty.
Now, there was a lieutenant who was charged with rape and later found not guilty, and during the time that I guess he was waiting for his case to be adjudicated, he was allowed to work in records. Why did you feel like that was an okay place for him to go rather than a very serious allegation?
As that case came forward and the allegation became more serious, that's when we did take a second look at it, and we placed him on that same assignment. And I think he recognized the seriousness of it, what the outcome was going to be, and resigned shortly thereafter.
Now, I'm not sure that I'm following what you're saying. Just because, did he come off of records and wind up on administrative assignment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
At a certain point.
Yes.
Did he make that decision, like I need to come out of there?
No, we made that decision. As there was an allegation from a domestic partner, we looked at it. We felt it serious enough that we need to look at it in two veins, criminal and internally in a different manner. And once we got into the investigation and saw the seriousness of it, that's when we made the decision.
I'll be honest, I did not realize that officer had resigned. So that officer, that lieutenant, he did resign?
He did.
I remember the case.
Skinner was down there for a day before he resigned, for a day or two before he
But that
resigned.
one I remember, that's a little more recent. That was good. Yeah. And I didn't know him personally, so I found that interesting. Chief, would you, I don't have any more questions about this. Would you entertain a question or two about some other things?
It depends.
Yeah. Yep, grab a drink, please. I'm curious, were you surprised at all by the pushback from people in North Nashville when the department and others suggested that might be a great place to put a precinct? Not too long after that, some people expressed concern.
You know, in any situation, I pushed forward the Veterans Service Bill at the legislature, and that's recently passed. It's on the governor's desk at this point, where that persons who are legal residents in the United States and have served in the military for us, fought for us, and received honorable discharges would be eligible to apply to be a police officer. And I thought it was a good thing. Everybody around me thought it was a good thing. We pushed that forward at the legislature, and we found out there was opposition. Now, it passed overwhelmingly in the end, but there was opposition. It totally surprised me. So yes, Jefferson Street, that surprised me, because the people that I had talked to beforehand were overwhelmingly in favor. So what we have is a group of people who have gathered together who are not in favor. Overwhelmingly, the persons, the elected officials, the ministers, the businesses, people who are invested in Jefferson Street and have the long-term future of Jefferson Street in their mind are in favor. So we'll let this play out, and we'll decide at some point what we do. But right now, Jefferson Street, the people that have the future of Jefferson Street in their hearts are wanting it there.